Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Winning the Battle Against Scam Calls, how we mitigated caller ID spoofing. Such an honor to be here today at RSAC. My name is Karri Akka. I'm head of CSOC at Elisa. Elisa is market leader of telecommunication and digital services in Finland and also Estonia. I have three wonderful colleagues here with me from Elisa, NCSC, and Finnish National Bureau of Investigation. First, the mandatory disclaimer. You can take a picture if you need. And then very briefly about the agenda of the next 40 to 50 minutes. I'm going to start with the sort of describing the problem in Finland, how we saw it, how big of a deal it was for us, and sort of the reasoning why we had to do something. And then my colleague from Elisa, Jukka, will go through the technical solution and some statistics about the what we did. And then after Jukka, we will have Lauri, who will describe the nationwide model, how the collaboration between teleoperators and different authorities, how the collaboration went on, and what's the situation at the moment. And last but not least, Jussi from National Bureau of Investigation will have the law enforcement agency perspective and more, I would say even more stunning statistics about the crime scene in Finland at the moment. You will have time for questions in the end, and I would ask at the end to come to the microphones if you have some questions. About the problem, maybe a couple of years ago, we had a very fast rising problem in Finland with the scam calls. Scammers using, or the perpetrators using caller ID spoofing to gain trust from victims. Let's say 2021, the problem started very fast, and sort of we saw that this will be a major problem in Finland if we don't do anything, and actually we started to see also in the news, the newspapers were screaming, if not daily, then weekly. We felt that why don't operators do anything, and the basic idea for everybody in the telecommunication industry was that this is a problem, we cannot do anything about it. It will require a lot of time and cooperation between operators, and there were talks about stir and shaken and stuff like that. And oftentimes we heard people from telecommunication industry saying that there's not really anything operators can do. And I remember this one day, one of our senior analyst came to me and said, pardon my French, this is BS, there's always something we can do, we just have to try different stuff, and it's a matter of will. And that was sort of a catalyst for us, for our action. And first we needed to have a better situational awareness of the problem. We knew that there's a lot of scam calls, but we really didn't know how much exactly. So we started to monitor the traffic coming from abroad. We knew that the vast majority of all scam calls come from abroad. So we started to monitor the incoming calls from abroad to Elisa customers using Elisa caller ID, and we saw that almost 90% of all daily incoming calls to our network from abroad were with the fake caller ID. So that kind of gave us the first sense of urgency. So 90% of all incoming calls to Finland from abroad were presumably fraudulent. And if we take 3 random dates of the profile of a date, we saw that the perpetrators were quite professional actually. They work from 8 to 4 as everybody else do in Finland. They start at 8 o'clock and there's 3 different day profile. And as you can see on one date, that's the 19th of July, I guess they had to do some overwork to gain the threshold of the bonus metrics or something like that, because they worked a little bit later on that day. But on those 3 different dates, you can see that the legitimate call rate is around 25%. And my colleague Jukka will come later, and we will see what we did, and he will go through and explain what we did, and then the same call rate nowadays. But I have still one more slide about this the statistics, and from here you can see one example week. And as you can see, the perpetrators, they start at 8 o'clock, they finish at 4 o'clock, and vast majority of all incoming calls, so the red ones are fraudulent, and green are legitimate. And as you can see, they work from Monday to Friday, a little bit of work on Saturdays, but Sundays are for rest. And seeing all this, we sort of figured out that, okay, there has to be something we can do. There's always something. And we started to try different things. And from that, we at Elisa, we got our motto that you don't have to outrun bear, you just have to outrun the guy next to you. So we figured that if we try all different kind of stuff, maybe we will make it a little bit more difficult for the perpetrators to operate in Finland, and maybe they will operate somewhere else. So we had some ideas, and Jukka, can you tell us what we did?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon. My name is Jukka Pietarinen. I'm security manager at Elisa Corporation, responsible for the telecommunication area, security management and capability development. I will be showing you the background, the basis of the problem, why the caller ID is just a parameter that can be changed so easily. And then I will be introducing you the Elisa solution, the actual technical solution, what we are doing in order to prevent such falsifying of the caller IDs. And the last part of my presentation will be the statistics, as Kari told you. My colleague Kari just showed you the situation where we were in when the problem was its worst, and we will see what is the affection of our implementation to the actual problem. But let's start from the problem itself. The reason for this problem lays on the quite old protocol called Signaling System 7, shortly SS7. It's used in landline services, 2G services and 3G services. And basically the standardization started back in 1970s, and that was for the landline. And the mobile parts were added in the beginning of and mid of 1990s. There has been some minor changes, modifications after that, but the kind of a body of the whole protocol has remained just the same. And as long as those services are there, and operators allow their customers to roam and use those services to other operators' network. SS7 needs to be supported. Even though you don't have, for example, 2G and 3G networks, you need to support the SS7 in case that you are allowing your customers to use such services abroad. I won't be covering the landline, fixed line services today because those supposed to be fixed inside of a certain border, and if operators allow their numbers to be used abroad freely, they jeopardize the numbers, and that they jeopardize the trust of a customers and trust of a number. So those should be used inside of certain borders. In our case, of course, inside of Finland. And there's certain special cases, for example, customer services abroad for the, for example, for the Finnish companies, they have outside of Finland, for example, Spain, customer services. But in those cases, the number ranges needs to be limited, and the interfaces needs to be agreed where those numbers should be used. So when you allow your landline to be transferred freely, then you actually can't have control over that. But in a mobile, it's a bit different because mobile customers roam almost globally, and you need to allow them to call home. You need to accept the calls from abroad. Let's go back to the SS7. Basically, like other protocols where the standardization started back in the 70s, like TCP/IP, for example, there's no inbuilt security. So basically, there's no way to verify the caller ID. In the protocol itself, there's no way to verify the caller ID. So everything needs to be built on top. If you want to have security features in the protocol, same goes with the TCP/IP as well, you need to build the security features on top of the actual protocol. And the protocol itself being obsolete, being without built-in security is one of the reasons why the caller ID is just a parameter there. But third reason for the high rise of the caller ID scamming is that the environment has changed a lot. The SS7 network, which is again a global network, used to be operators' playfield. 20 years ago, there wasn't much of a software available. Commercial software, of course, but it was quite expensive. Competence outside of the operator competence, there wasn't that much of a competence that someone could build SS7 solution, even though they would have gained the access to the network. But there wasn't that many third parties that had access to the network. So basically, from the isolated operator's playground, it has changed to an open network because there's a lot of open source available, even software as a service, ready-made solutions for perpetrators to use. And SS7 access can be purchased through the internet. So basically, from the closed environment to totally open environment without any security features built in. So basically, operators even nowadays don't have detection and protection capabilities, so they could know what kind of traffic in their network is at the moment. Before we go to the technical solution, I want to brag a little bit. What you're about to see is actually a solution that Elisa was the first operator to implement in the network. So we were the first one taking concrete actions to prevent caller ID spoofing with this technical solution. And since July 2021, we've been able to block most of the scam calls in our network. And now to the technical solution itself. It's based on SS7 features and number blocks. So basically, all the operators have their number ranges. And outside of that number range, if you get a call using the number which is not in your number range, you already know that it's falsified. But then we are using the ATI, which is SS7 message anytime interrogation query, to request the subscriber's information from network. So in mobile network, all the customers need to register in their network. And we always know in which radio network the customers are when they are roaming. So we use that information. Basically, before we connect a call, when the call comes to the Elisa's network's porter, before we connect a call to the customer, we check whether the caller ID is in our caller ID range. If it's not, then we can drop the call. We don't need to connect that call at all because we know that it's falsified. And if we see that the number is used, it's our number, then we do the ATI requests and check out whether the customer is allocated, whether the number is allocated to any customer. So basically, it's our number, but we haven't sold it to any customer yet, so it's not allocated. That's the case that we know that it cannot be a real customer, so we can drop the call. And the next one, if the caller ID is in our number range and it's allocated to customer, we can check out whether the customer is registered in our network. So basically, if the phone is on or off. And again, the phone is off, we can drop the call. And the last piece of information that we need, if everything else matches, then we check the customer's visitor location register's address, which is telling where the customer is. Whether the customer is in home network, so basically in our case in Finland, or somewhere abroad. That's the level of information that we need. And in case we see that the call comes from abroad, but the customer is in Finland, we filter out the caller ID. So basically, we connect a call, but from unknown number. So basically, our solution is not fully preventing the scam calls, but what we are trying to do here, in case the number is total nonsense or is not in our network, we can drop the call. But we want to connect a call because there's some of the services that we still have that can actually give us mixed information. But it seems that it's enough that we just clear out the caller ID in order to cripple the trust between the perpetrator and the possible victim. The next one will be the statistics. This is a comparable statistics to what we've seen before. So basically, again, 1 week, this is in the beginning of August 2021. The green color is comparable to what Kari showed you earlier. So the level of the legit calls is just the same. But as you can see, the profile and the volume of the fraudulent traffic is changed quite drastically. So basically, there's a high peak every morning when they start their work, and they seem to notice that the scams are not going through, and then the calls are dropping, kind of melting to almost a background noise. And then next morning, Tuesday morning, they start all over again, and same thing happens. So after 1 month after the implementation, the figures were like this. And here's a bit longer period from February this year. And again, the pie chart is comparable, although the Garris pie chart was taken from those 3 particular days, but this is the whole month's pie chart. So you can see that 3% of the calls this year for February were falsified, and 97% were legit. So basically, the affection of our technical mitigation can be seen here quite clearly. From the situation where we had more than 70% of the calls coming from abroad were falsified, we are now in a situation that 97% are legit. That was the last slide. The next one will be my colleague Lauri.
Yes, thank you. So now we, thanks Jukka, that was very interesting. Now we will move to Traficom's part of this presentation. So my name is Lauri Isotalo, and in my part I will explain the regulators part of this development process. So if we start from the year 2020, I would say that during that year we saw a gradual and later on very rapid growth on CLI spoofing. And the beginning of 2021 we had really a big problem, first quarter of that year. And what we actually did at that time, since we have a good connection with our Nordic counterparts, other regulators within EU and of course with FCC, we contacted them, and actually we had some discussion about this dilemma and this phenomenon. But what we unfortunately found at that time is that we couldn't find any model that would be rapidly available for us. And for this reason, actually, we started to have a closer cooperation and discussion with our telecom operators and also with other authorities in various groups and task forces. So our process was pretty much is that we wanted to carefully hear operators' view and understanding of the CLI spoofing. And also we listened to Lias, like from Jussi, and who were also involved here. And then we actually got kind of a full understanding of the problem. And we have quite quickly found out that there was a clear demand that Traficom should actually lead this development process. And for this reason, in the beginning of year 2021, on February, we started a special task force. And that was only a small group of experts. And our idea was within those experts to bring all the material, all the information together to the same table. And also try to somehow to conceptualize the problem. So understand that deeply and also divide that kind of to well-defined parts. And also at the end also understand what would be the size of the work to be accomplished. And after that we were able to start an extensive series of workshops. Actually we did have 10 workshops, and we started from the June 21, and we worked very intensively until January 22. And I could say the key responsibilities for Traficom in that process there were actually several. First of all, it was very important that there was a party that documents all the development phases and also set the schedules. In a way, we reviewed the outcome and the target all the time. So we would go right to the right direction. And also we were at the same time always sketching kind of a technical recommendation structure, documentation that would illustrate what is our accomplishment by a certain date. And of course, ELISA pilots during that year were really a great help for us. So our goal of planning for national model was quite simple. Actually, what we wanted to have a model that we could actually implement rapidly, almost instantly, or at least in the short term. But it should be also something that we could and we can actually develop that also in the long term. And part of our work was actually, it sounds pretty funny, we had frequent homeworks. So between those 10 workshops, when we ended one workshop, there was always homework for operators to do. And when we started the next workshop, we gathered all that information. So between the workshops, operators had to study the material, create and validate new possible solutions. So that was pretty interactive, I would say. And what we actually achieved is that we are proud of the model, since the model very much, very efficiently detects and blocks the calls with spoofed CLI. And also what we achieved, now we have a good set of blueprints that Finnish operators can now implement rapidly. It is also a solution that we know that has a really significantly decreased number of the cases. And finally, of course, we made one recommendation, and further on later that year, also regulation which mandates the work. And also, I would say that, and we can say that this is a model solution that could be well applied elsewhere in Europe, or perhaps in the UK and even in the States. So if we now think back our work in a task force and our working methods, I would say that there were several important aspects. One thing was that we were able to gather a group of really experienced specialists, and those people really had time and resources and authority to do that work and launch tests and pilots in their own companies. And also, it was really good for us, we had only a kind of a minimum senior management control. No bureaucracy, no hierarchy. So we had a mandate as a group, as a task force between the Traficom and the operators and LIAS, work as a united team and share all the relevant information when we needed that. And also we had brilliant advocates that really had a kind of authority to represent their own companies and do the right decisions and push those forward. And of course, finally, I would say that there were quite a few, really many individuals had a very strong motivation and actually a strong will to take challenges and solve this problem. So this was my part, and now I will think it's part for the Jussi to continue. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Lauri. I still get the goosebumps hearing like it's my 10th time, and I'm part of the speakers. My name is Jussi Larmonto. I'm from the National Bureau of Investigations, and I'll be talking briefly about how we, the law enforcement, saw the project, the problem, and where we are now. And early 2020, we at the MBI started seeing that people in Finland started filing reports that they were getting calls from, at first it was just mainly Microsoft support, and they ended up losing their money. And the calls were coming in big. The reports coming to the police, the amount of reports was big. This was new to us, so we reached out to our international law enforcement partners, and we started learning that it's sort of a new thing. It's been going around some countries. In some countries it was starting at the same time, and there's no solution. Like, the messages we were getting was, yeah, that's the problem and nobody can do anything. That's how it's going to be. To be honest, at first we weren't very concerned, just for the sake that the callers were speaking English, and we were confident that Finnish people wouldn't fall into the trust. They did. And yeah. Okay, so 2020, early 2020, for the first few months, there was some evolving in the fraud process, but during, like already in the summer of 2020, it was at its peak. So it was a call coming in, spoofed. It was an English-speaking caller from from Microsoft support or another known company, telling that the victim has a problem. Most of you guys, you've heard about this issue. So the victim didn't even know that there was something going on with the computer, but ended up passing on credit card information, or already by summer, in the majority of the reports, the victims had agreed in installing a remote access software, giving bank credentials, and losing all their money in the bank accounts. The volume of calls coming in to the people, that it was big, would have been big in bigger countries, and we're a small country. The technique combined with the volume and its success rate made us into looking more closely into the reports. So that's what we did. We read tons of reports, and why are people losing their money? And we came to this conclusion that it is the spoofing part that creates a level of trust to the victim, that after that, anything goes. This wasn't the first time we talked with the operators. We already had some good cooperation going on, but so we reached out and talked to the operators, to Traficom, to the banks, and we compared our notes. They had their statistics, we had ours. They had seen the same problem with the spoofing. We combined that, and for the next year, we kept on following the project. The operators and Traficom were going on, and this is how it looks to us now. So 2020, the thing started. It went on to 21. The project started in 21, but we know that by the end of 21, most of our operators were quite set in their processes, not there yet, and they still have some time to fine-tune, but end of 21, they started revving up the engines, those preventative engines. And so as year 22 started, pretty much all operators were already doing a lot of mitigation. And we were following the reports that were coming in, and there wasn't that many anymore. And the criminal loss was the biggest thing. We were still getting in reports. People were getting called in much lower numbers. And at some point they started calling from foreign numbers. They tried, but that trust wasn't gained at that level. This 22 number, it's still lacking. It's lacking some of the last months of year 22, but we know that it hasn't increased that much. But I would say it's a pretty good drop going from what it used to be. So why is this important? this tech support thing, it was like being a laboratory. We had a certain modus operandi that started. We knew the cause. We took a really good close look at the crime script, worked together, and we were able to see the effects. And especially because we knew that spoofing was such a major thing in the tech fraud thing. But spoofing can be used in so many other types of fraud. These are some of our figures from 21. CEOs, romance scams, investment frauds, our biggest online frauds that we encounter. If you're from a big country, this might not seem as much, but in Finland there's 5.6 million of us. So, and I've been talking with a lot of international colleagues, and quite often these do scale. So that'll be on CEO frauds, €1, romance scam €1, and investment fraud approximately 4. And on tech support, the 7 million was about €1.40. And the crooks, they use spoofing in these two. In those, like in these modus operandi, the spoofing isn't the major thing. So those things keep on going, but it is making things harder for the perpetrators. The thing is, with online frauds, especially now, as they figured out that instead of just getting the credit card information and getting a few $1,000, they can just get the credentials, wipe out the accounts. The loss to citizens is devastating. It's financially, but also mentally, it is big. And we try to take care of our victims and talk with them, but it's absolutely devastating. Investigation is hard. I'm from my job is to support an investigation. I should be saying, yeah, we're doing good, but we're getting better, I would say. And I think this is in all countries. There's more and more investigative success. However, the number of reports is so big, even for us in Finland, and we have approximately 1,000 investigators in the whole country investigating all the crimes. So it is hard, it is tedious, and it consumes a lot of time and resources. That's why we prefer prevention. We're very happy about this project. Trust, that is the thing that we should be focusing on. There are, of course, the technical solutions, but as long as it is the citizens, the people that are getting victimized, it is social engineering. We have to find something how to affect that trust. And because it's not the fault of the victim. I say this in all the presentations I give. It's never blame the victim. The people, the perpetrators, they are so good. It is their job, and they're good at it. And even though I know sometimes, oh, why you gave them money, but it's never to blame the victim. You got a minute before Q&A, or 2 minutes. This thing, okay, the motto of this RSA conference is Stronger Together. This is a great example of working together. We, the law enforcement, Traficom operators, there were banks involved on other issues, but we need to work like this nowadays. The whole scene of fraud has changed. This is not even a new thing anymore. It is so difficult that we, just the law enforcement, we can stick to ourselves and just wish that it'll work out. It won't unless we work more and more together. Trust also, okay, I was talking about earlier the trust between the victim and the perpetrator, but we have to have trust. And this is something we've been doing really good, because it wasn't just 2020, we had the collaboration going on earlier. We talked with the operators, we talked with Traficom, the banks, and all the stakeholders that we find that we need to talk to. And it's not just a few emails, but we have to keep in contact and share information and have projects like this. And it is about finding the golden nuggets. By this I mean, this was our golden nugget that we found. Fraud it's not extinct in Finland. So there's a lot of stuff that we're not handling right, or we don't have the solution. That's why we're telling it out now, and we're hoping that, as we know that some other countries are figuring other stuff out, they will share that information, and we can learn from them, we can learn from each other. We started talking about this within the law enforcement via Europol last year. International interest has been big. We've been talking with a lot of countries already, and the thing is, after first time we talked about it, there were some countries who sent an email that, hey, it sounded super, like we have this problem, can you send me the code and maybe on a USB stick so we can just stick it in our computers and it'll solve it here. It's not like that. It is a big process. It is a project model, technical solution. An example, cooperative solution. But for this, we were able to do it. And for now, it looks good. It will change for sure, but it looks good. Yeah. That's about it. We now have 5-6 minutes for Q&A. And as for that, I will leave you with our takeaways. Right, brilliant. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So it seems like the solution you've implemented is one that I've lobbied for with individual human beings for a long time. You have to raise the level of paranoia to an appropriate amount, right? Because as the first speaker pointed out, people grew up trusting telephones, that they would pick up the phone, and if you had caller ID, whatever it said was the person on the other end, right? And there's where the problem starts. But I think the problem continues because people don't understand they're lied to every single day, all the time, and the good liars make them believe it isn't a lie, and that's how they succeed. So do you see a component of this being raising the public's level of paranoia, and then how do you do that without making them, every one of them, a conspiracy theorist?
Yeah, that is a great question. I don't know. Like in this case, as you said, it is the trust for our national number is institutional, and we, of course, after this was mitigated, we talked with our press, and we raised awareness so that they would be able to like warn people. It is more easy to warn about other issues, but the thing is, raising that like paranoia, we can't go there that much. It's impossible. We have tried at some point, so we have to find some other solution. Sorry, yeah. Okay, maybe over there first. Yeah.
Hi, thanks a lot for the presentation, really interesting. I've been doing a lot of analysis into international traffic into the Nordics, including, of course, Finland, and we can see similar issues with different telecom services, and here I'm mentioning messaging, especially messaging. So question to you, Jussi, do you use the similar methodology for other telecom services? And of course, messaging would be like spot on for me.
If you're talking about smishing campaigns, for example?
Yeah, not only smishing, but we also see spoofing and a lot of problems involving messaging, which is, I mean, it's getting worse and worse, to be honest.
Yeah, we try to. Is there somebody else who would like to comment on that area?
Well, I could maybe comment on smishing that there's an ongoing group that we are dealing with this problem. But Jukka, you can, of course, have an.
Yeah, we're participating in a group as well, and Elisa as operator, we have a kind of the same aim that we had with the caller ID spoofing. We try a lot. We pilot with real customers. We try to find the golden nugget. We are not there yet, but again, it's a matter of a collaboration between different parties, and we're doing that.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next
A
question.
couple of quick questions. So following to that question, have other telecom providers around the globe, have they approached you to basically use your approach to do the same internationally? Let's say North America, have they, because we do have pretty much the same problem. Is that your approach can be expanded to other markets as well?
Yeah, well, I would say that our approach would be like, it wouldn't replace Stir and Shaken. It would nicely complement it. So, but we have received a lot of interest from Europe and outside Europe for our model. Yes, that's right.
Also, since you incorporated this into your analysis of the numbers coming in,
Yeah.
have the bad actor got inventive and started doing something more to tackle that your solution, or are you seeing more things happening beyond what you have implemented?
Well, I would say that, of course, we are quite ready to have a phase number 2 later on. So at the moment, I would say that we go into the production, and we are production with our phase number 1. But of course, later on, it is for sure that we have to develop our model further.
Yeah, but we haven't actually seen any increase in the fraudulent traffic, so it seems that it's still effective. But you never know. We are here, at the moment we are in a quite good situation, but what comes tomorrow, we can't really know.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
just need to be ready.
Okay, so they have given up for now.
No.
It's the other guys there.
Yeah.
So I guess I had a pair of questions. First, for the law enforcement side, do you have some sense of where these scam calls are coming from? If they're English language and such, do you have some notion of the nation of origin?
Yeah, well, as it was for us, pretty much all the reports coming in said the caller had an Indian accent. So, and there's a lot of open source material about the big call centers in India, and we're pretty sure that's where they were coming from.
And then the other one was maybe a little more technical. Your approach, I don't know how the market in Finland is among your operators. I'd assume this approach works best if one operator controls a large block of numbers. Are you the largest operator, and how do you think this would scale to a country if there were multiple?
Yes, we are. But again, I will point out that we are doing this in collaboration with authorities. So basically, the ELISA's innovation, technical innovation, transformed to national legislation in the hands of Traficom. So basically, all the operators in Finland are doing the same. But it started from ELISA, of course.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think we are almost out of time. Oh, there's the question. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead,
Sorry,
please.
ask the last question. I think the reason you said at the beginning is the fundamental reason why there are support calls, because of lacking of security features in the current communication protocol. So, as a telecommunication member in international community, how do you think, or how easy or difficult do you think to develop some add-on security features so you could technically, fundamentally solve the issue, just like some features, security features on top of TCP/IP digital signature, so that if implemented properly, the communication could be more secure?
Yeah, basically, there's a solution which is Stir and Shaken, which is actually implemented here in US with quite many operators, and it's a kind of a signature certification-based addition to the protocol. But the problem is that it's quite costly. It's not that simple to implement, and we were in a quite a hurry, in a situation where almost in high peaks 90% of the calls were falsified. So we needed to act quite rapidly. and we didn't have time to implement the Stören's Segen. And again, the certification-based security needs other parties to implement the solution as well. In Europe, there's not that many operators that are using Stören's Segen at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're going to get kicked out for exceeding our time, but I thank you for your interest.